this contradicts the evolutionary claim that dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago.
Well, okay.
And now,
so we're not talking about the flood anymore.
No, that's relevant. It's relevant because what it's saying is that the dinosaurs actually went extinct recently, not millions of years ago. Okay, so that's just another piece of evidence. You can keep compiling this. You know that the Colorado River actually enters the Grand Canyon much lower than the top, okay, of the Grand Canyon. Then it exits out the bottom. Now the question here is this: have we ever seen a canyon formed over millions and millions of years? Okay, well, the Grand Canyon, you have to look at it and say, from a geological perspective, how did this canyon form? It's much more likely that water flowed, rushed, and carved the Grand Canyon than it is that the Colorado River, which is very tiny compared to how wide the Grand Canyon is, actually formed the Grand Canyon. Okay, another one is Arches National Park. They have over 2,000 arches in Arches National Park. Now, wait, let me finish. Let me finish this last point. The arches aren't being formed anymore. Okay. If the arches are breaking down, which they are, they have tons of arches break every year. If the arches are breaking down and they're not forming anymore, what this means is they were caused by something that's no longer happening. And the question is, what would cause 2,000 arches way high above sea level to be formed? Well, if the water was rushing off the continents, that'd be plenty of evidence that's the case. Another one is the fact that we still...
Well, no, we're not just going to list off a bunch of random nonsense.
Your science is abysmal, and I'm very sorry to say it. Kevin, it's just wrong.
That's an ad hominem attack.
No, it isn't. Your science is abysmal.
You do not understand
logical You're a nice guy.
No, you're clearly a smart guy. You're attacking me without refuting my science.
Real quick, so we can give all the...
Okay, that's ad hominem.
No, it's
not.
Yes,
you're saying my science is abysmal and I don't know what I'm talking about. Why don't you refute what I'm saying instead of attacking me?
Okay. Real quick, so that all the viewers can enjoy these arguments and the actual evidence that exists surrounding them. What's the website again? Because all these are on the same damn website, and they give the actual...
I would be happy to give the websites.
Talk Origins. TalkOrigins.com. Thank you.
Okay.
Talk Origins... Oh, no.
Do you mind if I give a website too, then?
Please, 1 second. Yeah. .org?
I'll check. It should be Talk Origins.
Anyways, talkorigins.org or talkorigins.com. All of these arguments are there, and it gives the answers to them. It gives the actual science behind them, and it shows what evidence does or does not exist.
Creation.com, also answersingenesis.org, and also ICR.org are all very good websites that are pro these arguments.
Right.
Talk Origins
they give these arguments.
is against those arguments.
Talk Origins shows the actual evidence.
Right.
Against that shows that these are bogus claims.
And you would say
not bogus claims.
Yeah, okay.
Well, look it up.
Okay.
Look it up.
Yeah. Decide for yourselves.
Yeah.
Look it up and decide for yourselves.
Obviously, we're not fans of just taking people's word for it. So.
And neither am I.
Obviously, go to icr.com.
ICR.org. Yeah. Creation.org or answersingenesis.org.
Answers in Genesis will give you all the arguments that he wanted to continue rattling off, and then you can go to Talk Origins. They're all there as well, and it gives you links to actual science and actual evidence, and so you can see why these are in fact bogus. But let's get on to, rather than just rattling these off and us saying it's bogus and you saying no, it's not, and we say, well, science disagrees with you. You're trying to use science, and yet science doesn't agree with you.
It does actually.
I mean, okay.
These are all assertions.
No, it doesn't. Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. Yes, it does.
That's why I'm saying,
let's just move on.
Telling me that I don't make any sense. You either have to give me an argument that refutes what I'm saying, because I'm giving you actual arguments, but you're just attacking me and saying my science is abysmal.
This will end right now if you think that you're just going to rattle off everything that's on Answers in Genesis, and we're going to sit here and refute it all, and that's. And if we can't, then we're not. The
whole idea is for you to ask us why we believe what we believe. And we believe it because we've looked at the evidence, Kevin. We've looked at the evidence that exists all over the world. You go to any accredited institution anywhere in the world, whether that's a college or whether that's a museum or whether that's some other scientific endeavor.
I mean, Kevin, we were brewing beer, 20, 30,000 years ago, and you're sitting here trying to tell us that the Earth is 6,000 years old. If you could prove If there was actual science, actual evidence in which you're claiming, and you could prove the Earth was 6,000 years old, you'd be more famous than Einstein, and for a hell of a lot longer.
Okay, so
I mean, this is
can I
just
give you
so
one of the evidences? Because you're attacking me again, but not letting me give the evidence.
Well, I think we should leave it at we've given everybody the websites.
They can
Let
look up
them
all
look
the
it
arguments.
up.
You're not going to list all
Look
of them
it all
here.
up.
They can look
Look it up.
if they
Think
haven't
for
heard them.
yourselves. Go talk to somebody that has expertise in the field, and make your own decisions. I think that's we're not going to argue science here. None of us are scientists. That's not to say that you can't understand something without being a scientist. Clearly you can. We understand electricity. We understand aerodynamics. We can understand things without having to be experts in them. But
And the Grand Canyon is not evidence for God. Okay. So
It's
there's
evidence
no.
for the truth of the Bible.
But okay. But the idea was for you to talk to us about why we are atheists.
And I mean, the only argument I've gotten from you as to why you're atheists is that
There's no evidence.
Is that your strongest argument is that you're neutral, not that there is no God. It's that you don't know if there's a God. That's what I see. But you're saying there's 99%. There's none of the gods that exist. But your argument is that you're neutral in the sense that
right. Yeah. Let me be clear about this. The extent that we're neutral on this question is the extent that we're neutral on whether we exist. Okay? We are intellectually honest enough and philosophically educated enough to say that we are not absolutely certain about anything. Okay?
Sure.
I'm not absolutely certain to the same extent, and I'm neutral to the same extent, that this cup doesn't exist. That this cup is a figment of my imagination. It is a collective hallucination right now. That this cup is here. Okay, that's the extent of our neutrality on this issue. Now, when you talk about evidence and science, and when we talk about evidence, let's be clear about something here. If you ask me for evidence of this cup, or if anything, if you ask me of evidence that my child exists, that there's a football game outside ruining our audio right now, evidence of, if you ask me for evidence of anything that I know of to be true, and not absolutely certain, but that I claim to know, if you ask me anything that I claim to know, what I would not do is give you a philosophical argument. That would be the last thing I would do. If you ask a scientist why evolution is true, they're not going to say, well, you know what you can't explain? You can't explain this, therefore evolution must be true. They're going to give you evidence. Okay? So when I ask for evidence of something so simple as you having a pet dog or a child or a cup with udders,
It's
you
a
know,
cool cup.
yeah, people will give evidence. Okay.
So there's
and hold on.
Okay.
Now we are going way beyond a cup. Something so simple as a cup. We are talking about the creator of the universe that is going to be my judge for eternal hereafter. You don't have the evidence for such a claim, and I want to be clear. You don't have any evidence at all, but you,
I disagree.
Okay, well hold on, because I know you disagree, Kevin. There's a difference in evidence that is required for certain things. Okay, I am claiming you have zero, but let's just talk about the difference in evidence. I mentioned a pet dog. If you tell me that you have a pet dog, your simple assertion of that, Kevin, is all I need for evidence. That you have a pet dog.
Sure.
And that's the reason why is because that's actually not the only evidence that I have. I have a tremendous amount of evidence that people owning pet dogs in this country today is a very common thing. It's not an outrageous claim. It's not a ridiculous claim. It's not extraordinary. You having a pet dog, further, doesn't change my behavior in any way. Doesn't affect my life in any way. Doesn't change what I'm going to do. In fact, I'm probably going to promptly forget about it.
Sure.
It doesn't change my life in any way. And I have tons of evidence that it's a completely normal thing. People have pet dogs. This is not an extraordinary claim. Now, if you tell me that you have a pet fire-breathing flying dragon, let's take out the fire-breathing. Let's make this more simple. A flying dragon. Your assertion is not going to do it for me. Now ask me, do I think flying dragons exist? No. Why? Well, there's no evidence of flying dragons. And we've looked in most places. Have we looked everywhere? Do we know it's impossible for a flying dragon? Could be from an alien planet. Flying dragons could exist. You're absolutely right. Flying dragons could exist.
Sure.
They're not even all that far off of the biology of what we've seen throughout the history of life on this earth. A flying dragon could exist. Do I believe, therefore, that you have this pet flying dragon? Absolutely not. It doesn't get me any closer to believing that you actually have one.
Sure, I understand.
The idea that one could exist doesn't help at all. I need a lot of evidence. In fact, if I go to your house right now and see this flying dragon, I don't think that would be enough evidence for me. I would need to bring a few scientists with me. First of all, just because it's friggin' awesome, and I would love that discovery to be documented, and I would like to be there when it is. That would be amazing. So I would need to bring a team of scientists and probably a couple of magicians with me to see whether or not this is actually true or a parlor trick. That is the difference of evidence that we need just for a flying dragon. And by the way, your flying dragon isn't going to change the way I live my life. God, especially in your version, would.
Yes.
And we don't even have we have no evidence. We have no evidence of this God existing.
Yes, and
and that's why
I would disagree with you.
I don't believe it. I couldn't believe that you have a flying dragon, and it wouldn't change my life at all. And I could actually physically get evidence of that.
Okay, so this is kind of along the same lines here, and I hear what you're saying, that this is why you're an atheist. And I guess, okay, so again, if we come back to MABOOM, or right, make an atheist out of me,
make a non-believer out of me,
make a non-believer out of me, whatever. Why have I chosen to be a theist instead of a atheist? If you're persuaded, because I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, and that makes sense, what you're saying about the dragon, about God, and certainly believing in God radically has changed my life. I mean, I would live very different if I was not a believer in God and the way I live now. But that being the case, I've decided the evidence is clear that there is a God. Now, as far as the evidence is concerned and logic is concerned, part of the reason I think this is because, okay, so logic, right, is not something that can be proven. It's something that's just assumed. The laws of logic, we all use it. A cannot be A and non-A at the same time. These sorts of things. You can take logic in college. But yet, logic is something you have to believe by faith. You trust your mind, right? Do you not trust your mind? Because you're evaluating evidence that you take the magician, you look at the dragon, the magicians turn out, hey, no, we figured out how he does this trick. You listen to what they say.
Because I don't fully trust my mind.
You evaluate it, right? You don't fully trust your mind, but you do trust your mind enough to make sense of what is around you, right? No or yes?
Well, I'm still confused at the faith and logic.
Here's the reason I'm throwing this in there, is because I do have faith that there is a God who has actually, by his nature, organized logic. Okay, now I believe that.
Okay. Logic is a concept.
Okay, as a theist, though, as a non-theist, you do not believe in God. Therefore, the logic that you have is a product of your mind, and therefore it may be valid or invalid, which means ultimately that the conclusions you come to about the existence of God or not God, or dragons and not dragons, is potentially completely invalid. Do you see what I'm saying? Your faith is in logic. My faith is in that God made logic.
No.
Your faith is in rationality. Are you rational? Are you a rational person?
I'll answer for him because that's a weird thing to answer for
Are
yourself.
you reasonable?
He's a rational, reasonable, logical person, yes.
Okay, so if we were to define rationality or logic, it has to do with the way you think. Meaning, let's say somebody says this. They come up to you and they say,
hold on,
I don't exist and I do exist at the same time. Or they say something crazy like, there's somebody talking
like
to me
the
right
world
now.
is 6,000 years old.
Yeah. Oh, no. No. So, right, they say something crazy. And by your logic, you say, that's crazy. I will not believe that. whether it's God or anything else. Now, what you're trusting in is your own logic, but you're a product of random chance because there is no God. So there's no reason to place any faith in your logic, which can't be proven to be true. The only reason I believe in logic and that my logic is sound is because I believe there's a God that actually made the logic. Okay, so what I'm saying is when it comes down to it, you have blind faith in logic that was produced by random chemicals and chance.
Man, you were off a ledge here.
Yeah,
That's reality.
No, because wherever the logic came from, it's no different for you than it is for us.
First of all, if
I
logic,
agree with you.
First of all, if logic was,
But can you prove that's true? Is the question.
if logic was divine, there would be no logical fallacies. Okay, and people wouldn't be so bad. And people wouldn't be so bad at it.
Well, we call them logical fallacies because it's a problem in their reasoning. Their logic is mistaken.
Yes, and if it was all divine, those problems wouldn't be there. Is my point.
No, that's not
and,
true.
And people wouldn't be so bad at logic,
People
and we
can-
wouldn't have to take a college course on
People
it.
can do things wrong as much as they want. People have free will.
Which is all the more reason to think that it wasn't divine.
That's not true. God gave us choice. He
Well,
gave us
I
the
was-
ability to choose whether we want to
Okay,
do what's right or
I'm
do
not
what's
sure.
wrong.
Okay.
Yeah. You said a great many things in there that were very interesting to me, but the show is supposed to be you interviewing us.
Well, you're asking me to become an atheist, and or you're not
No,
asking
that was
me.
Well, no,
you're
no.
not asking me. It's
We're just
making
telling you
atheist out of me.
why we are.
I'm trying to see if it's worthwhile for me to become an atheist because honestly, I don't want to. If God's not real, I don't want to believe in God. I promise you, I have no interest in believing in fairy tales.
Yeah.
I'm not interested. in that.
I would like to do another program, and
So I'm looking for an argument that actually would move me in that direction. Now, I'm not 100% sure God exists. I'm not. Okay? But like you, I feel that I have come to the most plausible conclusion.
Okay.
And if I'm missing something, then I'd like to know what it is.
Okay. Well, I'd like to do a whole episode on why you would be a completely different person if you didn't believe. But I think what we should do is maybe take the opportunity to take maybe some questions from some of the students that you brought and see if we can answer those.
Oh, I can't guarantee you that they have questions, but
Okay. Well, we can
you
ask
wanna
them and see.
open it up to them?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll let you ask them, and you can relay the question
Okay.
to us if you have any
Or
they have any-
comments,
or comments.
insults as well. We accept.
We're happy to.
Yeah.
Where do you guys get your morals if you don't have a submitted rule of morals? Because if you don't have an original creator of morals, then you can create your own morals and do whatever you want.
And the world would kind of look like it does today.
It's a fair question, and it's a question that we get asked all the time, and it's a question that deserves a good answer. The question, in case you didn't hear it, was where do we get our morals from? Because if there's no being that gave you morals, then basically you're free to believe whatever you want. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no right from wrong.
There is
We're just based
no
on animalistic instincts.
right. So that
I need to eat and I need to sleep.
right. So there's no right from wrong if there's no being that handed down those morals in the moral code. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's what I would say about that. Morality is very important, and it's something that we all have, and it predates all religions. Well, maybe not all religions, because I think religion has existed since the beginning of mankind. But morals and ethics are very important. Most of the people that I know that are believers as well as non-believers are very moral, ethical people. We all have. We're all taught. There's still like to tell. Somebody once told me that the difference between vice and virtue, that you learn virtue at your mother's knee, and vice you learn at some other joint. But more seriously, I think the point there is that you are taught by your parents and by your community as you grow up what proper behavior is and what proper ethics and morals are. And I would say this, that it's very important that morals and ethics evolve over time.
What you just said there about learning from our mothers and fathers is non sequitur. Because where did they get their morals?
They got theirs from their parents and from their communities
Where
as well.
it goes on forever.
It goes all the way back. And
And then there's got to be a start to it. It can't just go all the way back and all the way back and all the way back. A rock can't create morals.
okay,
I'm sorry.
so you're arguing. So okay, he's saying for those of you that can't hear that it goes all the way back. That your parents and their parents and the parents before, and clearly that's true. Animals have shown altruistic behavior as well. So all animate beings to some degree or another understand a sense of fairness and a sense of right and wrong.
So that's why the pet rock was so successful, wasn't it?
That's why the pet rock was so successful?
Yeah, because if you say all inanimate objects or animate objects have some sense of moral being.
I'm saying that
And
animate
trash can have feelings.
beings,
not inanimate.
not
Oh.
inanimate.
My bad.
Yeah. So the point is that it is important that ethics and morals evolve over time. The morals and ethics that they had 2,000 years ago when the Bible was written, the morals that existed 4,000 years before that, the morals and ethics from 1,000 years ago, even the morals and ethics that we had in this country only 100 years ago are very different from the ones that we have now, and that's a very good thing.
But who's to say whether they're good or bad, Jim? That's
Well,
the problem.
we collectively determine whether they're good and bad.
But
We collectively we start learning that people with different skin colors are actually no different than we are. That people who are different genders should have the same rights as we do. We collectively figure these things out as we go, and this is a good thing. It's a good thing that we actually evolve our morals and ethics because we become more moral and more ethical as a result.
Well, I don't think that that's a pattern in history because obviously the German people didn't become more moral during World War II.
Well, you can.
So doesn't it depend on who gets control?
Well, control is a completely different issue.
Well,
obviously, anybody that wants to be a tyrant, and there's still plenty of them on the planet.
Sure.
But that's why that's why we call them tyrants, because we can all agree, whether we believe in a god or not, that these people are tyrants, that they are trampling on the human rights of other people. And I think that you and I would all, and the folks in this room would all agree that to trample on the rights of minorities would be unethical.
Yeah.
To
Do you
trample on
think
the rights
that-
of women would be unethical.
But do you think that there's much solid ground there if you don't have a God as far as, because what you're really doing is, let's say you have a group of people like right over in the Middle East, and they're asserting that a woman is half as much as a man, and they are a majority of the population, and then you say, no, you're wrong, they're equal. And then they say, no, why are you imposing your morals on me? And then you are actually using might makes right to impose your moral viewpoint on this other group of people that has said, these are our morals. So really, is that evolution, or is that just humans dominating one another with their own particular viewpoint?
There's a lot of different things going on at the same time there. Obviously, there's always people that want to dominate other people. There's always people that want power in this world. There's always people that want money or whatever it is.
And
that
wouldn't
they're
you say
after.
that that's an evolutionary thing, that's
That
coming
there's-
from evolution? Might makes right? Survival of the fittest?
What do you mean?
Survival of the fittest, right? That the weak will slowly... So Hitler, as the example said, okay, these people are weaker, and therefore he called them useless eaters.
They weren't weaker, though. They were actually, he was wrong about that. They were actually just outnumbered.
So
And
Let's
outgunned.
hold on.
So natural selection.
A couple things real quick.
sure.
First of all, I mean, you're kind of shifting the goalpost here when when he talks about morals evolving. He's talking about in a static society, with one government that the politics will evolve, the morality of the people will evolve, and then you're saying, well, someone just comes in and takes over and might makes right. Yeah, that has happened, but like you mentioned, in this country 100 years ago, okay, no one has come in and taken us over. So our morals today in this country are very different than our morals 100 years ago in this country. Okay, and that's not necessarily a survival of the fittest thing. I don't understand the connection there, but there's one more thing that should be mentioned to get back to the original question. humans have something called mirror neurons. And so this is a very good example of naturally why we do certain things that are referred to often as moral or immoral. Moral. Human beings are able to, don't have a choice. We will feel a certain amount of pain when we see someone else in pain. And that is really a foundation for moral behavior. We don't like to see someone else get hurt, generally speaking, because it actually hurts us. We don't like to see pain and suffering in others because that causes suffering in ourselves. So to say nothing even of just the logical conclusion of I don't want to live in a society where everyone just goes around killing each other. We don't even have to go there because we naturally, whether we're taught or not, we just don't like to see suffering. It's the reason why companies or organizations get more donations when they just show you one picture of one individual suffering rather than a whole country. Because when we see suffering on one face, that causes suffering in ourselves and we get concerned. And we do the moral thing of donating money to stop that suffering. We know how much better these campaigns work if we just show one picture of one person clearly suffering. And these are from our mirror neurons, and you can look those up. It's quite interesting. And we're not the only species that has these. But yes, a lot, as Jim was saying, is also from the society and religion and authority figures that we have in lives, and who raises us, and what we accept or don't accept as far as that's concerned. So I think that answers the question.
Yeah, so the question was, where do you guys get your morals from? And basically you're saying that it's as a group, as a whole, and I'm assuming you're meaning particularly American culture is
No.
Okay.
You know, like
because
you were saying,
because in some parts of the world, the people are drastically different in their morals. So
exactly.
I guess what I'm saying is you're saying that consensus
but
is where you get your morals from, based on what we have learned scientifically. Is that right, or is that not right?
There's two different conversations that keep getting mixed up here. One is the individual, and one is politics. I mean, you're talking about politics right now.
I am?
Yes, yeah, because you're talking about a country, and this country over there,
the
and
only
this
reason
country
I
over
say
here.
that is because you keep referring to this "we" thing, and I'm saying that there are people in the "we" that don't agree with you. So I'm wondering what the "we" is.
I think it's a fair point. I think it's a fair point.
Okay.
I think morality would be, if you were the only one on the planet, or you were living out in the desert somewhere and there was nobody else around, you wouldn't really have a morality or an ethics, because morality and ethics have to do with how you treat other people, with how you treat. Well, it also has to do with how you treat
what about
the world
like
around
a dog?
You. Yeah,
But you're saying intuitively, because of these neurons, we don't. We hurt when we hurt something else.
That's right.
So okay.
We've always, I mean, the Christians use this all the time, but it predates the Christianity.
Sure.
The idea that you should do unto others as you would have done to yourself.
Sure.
And that predates history. That goes back as far as you can look back in history, and people have always understood that. People have always had that on at least on a one-on-one basis.
Dinesh D'Souza actually said that he grew up in India where compassion was actually never taught. It was actually thought of as a weakness, in the sense that it was actually looked down upon to be compassionate, because it demonstrated to the people around you that you weren't strong. So I guess the question would be, are we changing today because we are, as you were saying, we are learning, and so we've identified that skin color is wrong, to discriminate because of skin color is wrong, but yet he's in a society where, are you saying that it's because they haven't moved forward in their knowledge, in their education, or what?
First of all, it must be said to the viewers right now, there are compassionate people in India. And India is full of compassion, okay?
So again, there are always exceptions in every direction. There's exceptions in positive direction, exceptions in negative direction. There's also sort of what you're talking about is more of a societal influence. Very often those influences...
So would you say that that does not have to do with evolution? So are you
No,
saying
no. When I say evolved, I'm using that term not in the
biological
sense. I'm using that term.
Can I ask a question to clarify on this?
Yeah.
Is there, as far as where you get your morals from, going along these lines, are you saying that at some point genetically our morals evolved over time as we went from lower organisms up, as we did, and this is usually what I hear from evolutionists, is that as a benefit to survival, we learned to take care of one another. And are you saying that over time what happened was our morals developed in a sense to take care of one another, and then when we got smart enough at some point, we began to be able to corrupt our own morals? Is that
No.
position?
First of all, it's only in social species where we see many traits and behaviors that we would call moral or immoral, altruistic behavior.
Sure.
It's in social species, pack animals, tribal, like humans, where morals come into existence. And this kind of goes back to what he was saying. If you're in a desert alone, the concept of morality is useless because you cannot affect anyone else. So when people start gathering together and living together, that's where we start looking at things and making rules for good or bad or right and wrong. Morality is just it's a concept.
So it's not a genetic thing.
Yes. What do you mean?
Well,
genetically,
I don't know what you mean by a concept. When I think of concept, I think of, whatever. I'm trying to figure out. So does it come from our biology, or is it something that we invented?
I think that all of our behaviors have something to do with our biology. So whether those are good behaviors or bad behaviors, those all come from our biology. If we were intelligently created, we wouldn't have dictators on the planet. We would all.
Well, that's not true. The argument for that is that we have free will, that we have the ability to willingly do what we want to do. And so
right,
some people choose to do right, and some people choose to do wrong.
But if you were intelligently designed, you would want to design a species that would want to cooperate and make things better for everybody.
Unless you had a greater purpose to creating people with the ability to choose freely.
You could still choose freely everything about your life.
Well, that's
you know.
If I tie my son to the bed and I say be good, and I come home and he didn't do anything wrong, he's not good, right? If I make him be good, then it's not freedom that.
Do you believe in heaven?
To be good. I do believe in heaven.
And in heaven, is there evil?
Okay, so this is how this works essentially. If you choose, right? It's like being on a sports team. You're voluntarily agreeing that you want to be on the sports team and you want to do what the coach says. So when the coach says to do something that you don't want to do, well, you know that you've already agreed that this is what I want to do, and I want to do it for the greater good. And so that concept, although of course not perfectly a perfect metaphor for heaven, in a lot of ways it's very similar in the sense that when I married my wife, I agreed to a bunch of principles, and I don't always want to do what's right, but because of that commitment I made to her in the beginning, I've agreed to put myself under those particular restraints.
Is there evil in heaven?
I would say probably not.
Okay. Do you have free will in heaven?
You do.
So it is possible to make a plane of existence where people have free will, yet there's no evil.
I don't know that his priority is creating that, putting a person under that kind of a position prior to them legitimately choosing to walk with God. So what I mean by that is this, is that when he made everybody, and I can't define the extent of the free will, but what I can say is that we have a freedom here that exists that is a greater freedom than what will exist. And for whatever reason, I don't know the answer, but for whatever reason, he's allowed that particular amount of freedom here. And then when a person goes to heaven, you're around a lot of people that have all made that decision, okay? And then there's going to be an absence of evil. I mean, that's metaphysics, but it's the only explanation I know of at this point in time.
Okay, well, it could be argued that God could have made humanity to be much better. It could be argued that God could have made humanity to be much worse in both cases, either case or all cases, humanity could have been given free will, and with the same aim for them to choose whether they were going to follow him and therefore be able to go to heaven and spend eternity where there is no evil, but still with goodwill. So I think that point is maybe we can see if there's another question. See if maybe one of the
Any
guys
other
has another
questions?
question or comments.
As far as Afterlife goes, what are your views there?
We don't believe there is an afterlife. We believe that what happens to you when you die is essentially what happened to you before you were born. And while we don't want to die, I'm sorry, for the viewers, the question was, what about an afterlife? We don't believe that there is one. We don't want to die. We enjoy life, and we think that you can find a lot of purpose in life. Whether you're a believer or not, you can certainly find a lot of purpose in life. And we don't particularly anticipate that dying would be any fun either. I hope it's in my sleep when I'm really old. But I don't fear it as a per se, because I don't fear it any more than I fear what happened to me or where I was before I was born. I have no recollection of that. I think we think we will just simply cease to exist.
So is that nothingness scary to you at all, or you have no fear in that?
No, I have no fear about the question is the nothingness that would involve scary to me. No, because I won't be conscious of it. I mean, any more than the nothingness from which I came. I don't have any recollection before I was about maybe 2 or 3, and certainly not before I was born. So it's no more scary to me to think about what it will be like in the year 2100 as it is to think about what it was like in the year 1900. So while I want to be on the planet as long as possible, I don't fear that.
Can I ask you a question about this? Because I'm just curious. So this is another reason why I'm not an atheist, and I'm interested in your response to this, and that is, so I feel like my life is pretty good. Like, I enjoy my life. I enjoy my kids. I enjoy my wife. The principles that I've learned from Scripture to me are very valuable, and love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, help the needy, visit the poor in prison, and blah, blah, blah. And I guess my question is if, as you said in the beginning, there is no evidence for God, but there's no evidence, quote, against God, if that was the case, and you're kind of a 50-50 in that regard, why is it that you've chosen to take the position that God does not exist when we're all going to die? And so let's say we abandon, or let's just get rid of the evidence versus the non-evidence and just look at it from the perspective of, from an atheistic perspective, I'm going to go into the dirt. And life tends to be brief. For some people, it's very brief. And so we're all going to ultimately come to that end. So for me, even in that regard, I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm going to have a good life here. I'm doing good things for people, and I'm trying to help people the best I can. I'm trying to love people and all these things, and these are the principles I've gotten from the Scriptures. Why have you decided that the belief in God, considering the evidence neither here for or against, why have you decided to go with atheism when you have that potential of an afterlife in heaven, abandoning the evidence here, rather than, do you really think that your life is so much better off from an atheistic perspective than a theistic perspective, that even with the idea that you potentially will go into the dirt, you've still chosen that position?
Yeah, this is essentially Pascal's wager, although his wager was
shorter.
Well, it's not particularly shorter. It was longer than people think that it is. But I'll say this, and this is a question that's very often asked as well. I don't have any choice in the matter. If I can't make myself believe something, so to me, intellectual honesty is for me what's most important. I can't make myself believe it. It is true that if you you can say you believe something and you can go along with it, and over time, again, the mind is put together so poorly that this actually does happen, that you can start to believe stuff that you didn't believe when you started to believe it. Recalled memories is a good example of that, but I can't make myself believe something that doesn't make sense to me. So I don't have any choice but to live my life the best way that I can with the evidence that I have. And I would say that all of the things that you listed, I think it's very important to point out, all of the things that you listed about how you're trying to live your life, to love other people, to treat them fairly, to treat them well, to be a productive member of society, and all the various different things that are important to most ethical people.
Sure.
Those things are all very important to non-believers as well. And in fact, it's a lot of non-believers came from belief, and they will tell you that it was a very liberating experience, because there is a lot of baggage with any given belief, not just Christianity, but with any given belief. There's a lot of baggage that comes with the dogma that you have to either ignore or tie yourself up into a pretzel intellectually to explain. That when you stop believing, that that weight is lifted from your shoulder, and you're at liberty then to see the world for how it really is.
So I just want to ask another point here. So you're saying that the non-believer has those same morals and so forth, but there's a guy named, and I'm not saying that all non-believers are like this. I'm just asking you the question: can you potentially see people going in these directions? So you're a very moral person, and Sean is a very moral person, and I've met many atheists that are very moral people, and I think that's awesome. But I also know atheists and non-believers that are not moral people. And Peter Singer, right, he is a professor at Princeton who, because of his evolutionary perspective, he says we are really no more valuable than any other animal is. And that being the case, we need to get rid of people. And so his philosophical understanding is that, and this is of other different people, that you can potentially abort a baby. Even
Okay, let me just cut you off here. Okay, there's first of all, read what Peter Singer actually wrote.
Yeah.
So let's just move him aside. There are really good people and really bad people on both sides of the camp.
Sure.
And not having a belief in God doesn't necessarily bring you to anything except for what Jim was mentioning, when people grew up religiously and then they suddenly realize, for whatever reason, that this is probably all bogus. They immediately realize that this is the only life that they're sure to have, and this is the only planet that we're sure to have, and if God didn't make it, he's probably not going to clean it up. So we need to do what we can, every chance we can, to make this life as wonderful as you can, and the same for those around you, and to keep this planet a habitable place for us all. Those are the only things that I've ever seen come from atheism, is that, oh wow, a little more urgency, this is all we got. This is all we're known to get. Other than that, you can't get anything from that. You can't kill witches from I'm not buying this religion.
Well,
you can't get discriminating against homosexuals because, well, this book doesn't make sense. What you can do is actually get those from a book that you believe is the Word of God, and it says those things. That you can get those things from a book that says those things, and you believe it to be true. Now, I can take the good things out of the Bible. I've read good things in the Bible. There's things in the Bible I like. I can take those. I can take the parts of the Quran that I like. I've read parts of the Quran that I like.
Well,
I can take those.
Yeah.
And I can also take parts of any book that I like. There's nothing stopping me from reading something that makes sense to me and putting it into practice. I don't have to believe that the Bible is true to take any part of it that I like, and it's very easy for me now to discard the things I don't like.
So don't you think, though, that if you believe in evolution, right, that there is philosophically, there is a end result to the idea that we are random chance, right? That the planet is random. That there really is.
There's nothing about biological.
Wait, let me finish.
Well, no, I have to stop you here because you keep saying random chance. There's nothing about biological evolution that's random chance. It's not random.
It's natural selection.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. So but it's not purposely designed. It's natural selection.
Yes.
Okay. So because there's no ultimate purpose, because there is no afterlife, don't you think that philosophically that's going to affect a person's perspective on the person next to them? And that really, that person, they're not made in the image of God. Come on, that's silly, right? But, so that being the case, and because there is no ultimate moral foundation, I recently read that Switzerland is actually talking about giving rights to plants because evolutionary, they are evolved and we are evolved, and so there's got to be a certain amount of respect for the plants. So I'm just saying, all I'm saying is, isn't there an end result to that could potentially be detrimental?
There's several things there.
Let me just mention one. Evolution has nothing to do with atheism. Okay, there are atheists that don't understand evolution. There are atheists that don't believe that evolution is true. Okay, being an atheist says nothing about believing the Bible causes you to not want to believe evolution. I get that, okay?
Okay.
If you believe that the world is 6,000 years old, or if you believe that we all came from just Adam and Eve, or if you believe that we all just came from Noah and the 7 others, evolution is a problem, okay? I get that. From the other side of the table, though, you have to realize it doesn't matter at all. I was an atheist long before I knew about evolution. Okay, it doesn't matter at all. Being an atheist doesn't require you to believe in evolution.
Sure.
And and evolution has no bearing on atheism. This is a completely separate conversation.
Well, I'm not saying that you have to be an evolutionist to be an atheist, or you have to be an atheist to be an evolutionist. I'm certainly not saying that. But I am certainly saying that, at least for many people, maybe not for you, Sean, but for many people, evolution helps to answer some of the questions they have about where we came from if they don't consider God an option. And so I don't...
Yes, it actually
I think
explains where we came from, yes.
I think that it definitely informs us, whether you're a Christian or not. There's the majority of Christians accept the facts of evolution. So it informs, science always informs.
I think that's a speculation there, what you just said. The majority of Christians believe in evolution. I don't believe that's
How's that
the
a
case.
speculation?
No, that's not a speculation, it's a fact.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Oh, Google it.
All right.
Google it.
Google it.
There you go.
I think maybe we should just, unless there's some other point that you had there, that maybe we should try and ask another question from the audience.
Well, I think we're almost out of time here. It's 3:04. So.
Yeah,
Okay.
we are. But I think there might have been a couple more. I want to make sure we get to them.
You know, do you guys have any other questions that you want to ask before we have to wrap up? We really appreciate you guys coming. For the viewers, Kevin brought some of his students with him, and they're sitting in the studio audience, and so we wanted to get them to participate as well. Unfortunately, they're minors, so we are hesitant to put them on camera, but we definitely want to take their questions and answer them if they.
It has nothing to do with what they look like.
Yeah.
Very well groomed and.
Yeah. They seem like very nice guys. Anything else, guys?
Well, I heard one thing said, it was a while ago, is that you can't know anything absolutely.
Right.
But at the same time, isn't that an absolute thing to say? Like, how do you absolutely know that?
Yeah. And I'm not absolutely sure that that's the case. I mean, this is when you start to study philosophy. I mean, because we're not speaking on
his
with
question,
street
by the way,
language right
his
now.
question, by the way, was somebody said before. Well, I think we've all said that you can't know anything with 100% certainty. Isn't that a pretty 100% certain thing to say? So, and it's actually a good question.
So yes, and so my answer is I'm not 100% certain that it's true. But
I think intellectually you can say about any given claim that you can't be absolutely 100% certain about any different claim. Now you can be on a spectrum as we talked about before, when it comes to acupuncture. Well, maybe you're at the 50%. There's some evidence for, some evidence against. It's not compelling either way. Some things there's tremendous amount of evidence for. So you can be a lot of different places on the spectrum. But I think it's just as Sean was saying, philosophically, it's pretty well agreed by most people that are engaged in these arguments. I don't think Kevin would disagree that it's hard to know anything with 100% certainty. You can know things with a 99.99 something percent certainty, but to absolutely know that what we're all experiencing here and the fact that you're all in the room and that sort of thing, it could all be just some sort of a
like the Matrix
hologram or something. I mean, it's possible. So I think it's just a philosophical point.
Isn't that kind of more far out than the vision of God? Isn't that more
far
out to think about than
like are you talking about the Matrix?
just like everything you just said, like that we could just be in a matrix or something like that?
Right. So the
Yeah,
question is,
it's unlikely, but yeah, the question is, isn't it
more far-fetched to believe in the Matrix than it is God. But I don't know, but I don't believe that we're in the Matrix either. So
yeah, I think that we know many things with very close to 100% certainty. So we're not flailing around on the spectrum when it comes to Kevin sitting here, or Sean sitting here, or you guys sitting here, or this cup being here. We're pretty close to 100% certain about these things. It's just a philosophical point. If you study philosophy, you'll learn that you have to sort of admit intellectually that we're limited in what we can know, and so knowing anything for certain is very, very difficult, if not impossible. It's more of a philosophical argument.
this is not how you would speak, for instance, on the street, or when we get into these theological and philosophical discussions. We have to admit agnosticism on just about everything.
Yeah, we try to qualify it when we can, but understanding that there is a spectrum and that where we are on that spectrum. So.
Okay.
Was there anything else?
Yeah, I have one comment. The biggest problem when we were talking about the whole evidence, like with the Bible, like, okay, if the Bible is true, like, okay, give me evidence for why the Bible is true, like, why we need to believe it. So, like, everyone used to say, like, atheists used to say, okay, the Bible was made up after, like, the resurrection and stuff, but then we found the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that's evidence, and there's many artifacts, like, around the world. Connor even brought this up.
Yeah, the Dead Sea Scrolls have nothing to do with the New Testament. That's Old Testament.
The question here real quick. Do you want to try and summarize this question?
Well, did you have any more on that?
No, it's just a comment, and I'm just saying, because you also made a statement that you studied a lot of those things that had to do with the Bible, like, to disprove it, and you just, like, said that they weren't true. So I was just confused on, like, your whole point, like, why you don't think the Bible's factual.
Why we don't believe that the Bible is the Word of God?
Yeah. No,
Well, let's go with historical or factual.
Okay. Well, historical.
So
There are many true things in the Bible.
yeah,
There are many true things in the Bible. There's also many false things.
It lists a lot of
I
places that people did know about at the time. Yeah. Egypt existed, the Red Sea existed. Mm-hmm. Certainly, those are going to be, and this is where these folks lived, is in that area. So, and it is also true that the Dead Sea Scrolls, for example, are a good archaeological
find.
They're an amazing archaeological find, and it shows that there was a group of Essenes that were living out in the desert in their own compound, waiting for the second coming, and they had either written or stored these Hebrew traditions, and so we have so it's additional evidence for the original Hebrew tradition, oral traditions, and some of the oral writings that predated the Greek version of the Bible. So it was an amazing historical find. In fact, I have a book right behind you there on the Dead Sea Scrolls. But it's not. There's no evidence in there There's no evidence for a particular God. These are just evidences that the things that were handed down orally by the Hebrews for many thousands of years had been written down and had been added to, and were part of canon that eventually made up the Bible as we have it today.
Well, yeah. The argument from the Christian perspective is that if you have a book that's consistently reporting accurately on history, and then it's talking about particular events that happen, then wouldn't you have more reason to believe that it's plausible when it talks about God?
No, not at all. No, listen. If I tell you right now that I'm wearing a black shirt, you know that I am telling the truth, and you can see it's a fact. I'm wearing a black shirt with all kinds of other colors on it. And so you know that I'm telling the truth, and you know it's a fact that I'm wearing a black shirt, so I have given you a piece of information that's absolutely verifiably true. Now, the next sentence out of my mouth is not affected by that. Now, I can then tell you that I'm blonde, and you don't therefore have to believe that I'm blonde.
Yeah, but
you can see that I'm, because someone said something true.
No, you're right.
Doesn't mean that everything they say is true.
That's
moreover,
certainly right. But if somebody is consistently telling the truth, like in a court of law, if somebody has a track record of telling lies, well, they actually use that as evidence that the person is not trustworthy.
Right. Now let me get to the more important point here. Just because someone says something that we can find out or that is believable, we think is true, doesn't mean anything else that they say is true.
You're right.
Moreover, let's say someone says a bunch of true things. The second they say something miraculous happened or some supernatural thing, we can't accept that no matter if they were telling lies or the truth or anything else, simply because that's not something we can accept. No different than you telling me, back to evidence, you telling me and believability that you have a pet dog. That's something that I can accept. You tell me you have a flying dragon. That's not something that I can accept, whether I find you to be a liar or not.
No. But here's the thing. We all use records of history. I mean, when it comes to George Washington and what he did, when it comes to Abraham Lincoln.
Yes.
So we all look at history. Hold on, let me finish. We all look at history and we make judgment calls about whether we think this actually happened or not.
Yes.
If they're actually rewriting history, we're like, I can't trust this person, right? But when we look at Herodotus or Tacitus or Caesar, we're looking for, is this a reliable historical record or is it not?
Right.
And that goes for scientists too, right?
Let's go back to Washington.
Let me jump in here.
Okay.
I would say this. There is tremendous amount of evidence that people living a couple thousand years ago who did experience some of the events that we know actually happened believed in a particular God. There's tremendous evidence for that. That's what we know. When we look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, when we look at the various other historical documents that come from that time, what we know is that there's a tremendous amount of evidence that people for many thousands of years, right up until the time of Christ and beyond, had a tremendous belief, and who were actually experiencing some of the things that happened that we have a secular record for. Those people had a belief in a particular God. That's what we know. That's not disputable, and because there's a tremendous amount of evidence for that, we do not have any evidence that they were right. That's where you have to decide. And like you're saying, you've decided they made this. Here's the historical evidence. They were accurate about this, but when they made this claim about God, I write that off. I will not accept that. But I'm saying I do accept that. That's all. That's the only difference.
We know you do.
Yeah.
And what we're saying is that's not a logical reason. That's in fact illogical to say, because they believed in God, and we know they believed in God, and they wrote down that they believed in God, therefore this God must exist. I mean, that's
I'm saying it's more
nonsense,
plausible. I'm saying we all have to make a judgment call.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no,
Right.
it's not. It doesn't
Right.
make it more plausible that the God exists because people believed in that God. People were believing in
No,
all
but
types of
what
gods.
makes
I think we understand the point.
Okay.
You're saying that it's more plausible looking at that. We're saying no.
Yeah, I'm saying because they told the truth about history, it's
we
more
clearly,
plausible.
We clearly disagree
Yeah.
about
and
the plausibility of the further claim.
Yeah.
So-
it should be pointed out they also told some things that were not true about history, and they also told contradictory stories. So it can't all be
and
right.
that can,
so
that
obviously
can be looked up
there's
as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I would disagree with that too.
Okay.
I just
Well, it can
want
be- it can be-
for the record, I don't
that's
want
fine.
somebody to
Sure
think
you
that my
would.
silence is
No, no.
No,
me
yeah.
agreeing
That's
with you.
that's
Yeah.
fine. People, and we do, as you do, we encourage people to look it up.
Absolutely.
Kevin,
Absolutely.
clearly we disagree on some points, but we are very glad to have you here. We always enjoy talking
Thanks,
to you.
Kevin.
Thank you so much
Yeah,
for
thank
coming
you.
on.
I enjoy the discussion,
Yeah.
even
Thank
though
you guys
it
for
gets a
coming.
little heated at times,
I
but-
want to thank the guys that came along with him. I really appreciate you guys coming and asking questions and just listening. We want to thank the viewers. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode of Make a Believer Out of Me. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Beautiful.
Thank
Okay.
you.